Hello, so I will build on the previous example that we used, which is transitioning from one view controller to the next view controller using a very simple segue. So basically our project had a view controller here, the red one, and when we clicked on this button, it triggered that segue to open the yellow view controller. So as a reminder, I'll just run the project again to show you what we have done. So basically we have the red view controller, you click on the go to next, it opens the yellow one, and then we close by clicking the close. So what if we would like to send some data from the red view controller to the yellow view controller? So basically, let's say we add a text field. Let's say we have a text field here, and in that text field we're going to enter something in the text field, say a name or something, right? And then we want to send that name from this view controller to the next one. Okay, that should be straightforward. So basically we'll do that. Okay, so in order to do this, we need to listen to use a feature that iOS provides, which will enable us to identify that a segue is about to happen, right? So basically, when a segue is about to happen, there is a callback function inside the view controller that gets called to indicate to the view controller, hey, by the way, there is a segue that's about to happen. And then basically in that function, as we will see, we will be able to identify which segue is about to happen, and then we will be able to pass data using that information. Okay, so what we're going to start doing is that let's add an outlet for the text field so that we can capture the name that's entered. Okay, so here is the class. We'll just drag and drop. It's an outlet. I'll say, for example, this is the outlet of this is the name text field. Okay, and basically what we're going to do is we already have the text field right now. So now what we want to do is what triggers actually the event is clicking the button. So when you click the button, it actually triggers the segue. And then when it triggers the segue transitions from this red view controller to the yellow view controller. Now, if you notice inside this view controller, there is, which is the red, we are inside that red view controller right now, the class that governs it. There is a function that we can override. It's called prepare for segue. You see here, prepare for segue notifies the view controller that a segue is about to be performed. Okay, cool. So we click here. I'll say print. This is prepare for segue called. Okay. So now notice when you run the app now, basically what's going to happen is that there will be a prepare for segue. So basically when you click on go to next, boom, you see the method, it got called prepare for segue. Where is it called? It's called in the red view controller. So now because the red view controller is the one that's initiating the segue, right? Okay, cool. So now notice that the prepare for segue method has some parameters. One of them is the segue. It actually gives you information about the segue. So now there could be multiple segues going from this view controller to this view controller. You know, different view controllers can trigger different segues. So basically what we need to do is to be able to identify that segue so that we could adapt our logic based on that. So now if you click on the segue and you look at its properties, one of them is its identifier. It's the name of the segue. It's a name, you know, that you can give the segue so that you can identify it by. How did I do that? I just clicked on the segue, and then there's an identifier here. Basically, I'll just give it a name. I'll give it, say, for example, segue from red to yellow, for example. Okay, so that becomes the name of the segue. Okay, it's the identifier of the segue. Cool. So basically, I can go here. I could say I'm inside the code now, and I have the segue that is currently being triggered. I could say if segue, okay, dot identifier, okay, is equal to, and then I paste the name of the segue, right? Now I'll say print, for example, I would say, oh, triggering this guy. Now we run it and see that the ID of the segue enables us to have customized logic based on the identifier. So basically I click on next, and you could see here triggering this segue. Why? Because the if statement condition evaluated to true, and then I just printed this statement. So now what I want to do is I'd like to to transition from, while transitioning, I'd like to pass some data. Okay, so the data that I'd like to get is probably the name. So basically what is the name is the name that I'm going to pass here. Okay, there is some information I'm going to type in here. I'm going to pass it. So basically it's very straightforward. So what to do is, to be able to do that, you need to get a reference of this view controller. Okay, so inside that view controller, how do I get a reference of the view controller that I'm transitioning to? So let's go back to this, the code here. Now the segue includes an identifier, and also the segue includes let's say destination view controller, where I'm going to, right, equals segue dot destination. You see here, you can get a destination. Basically this is where you are going to, this is where you are going to, and I could cast it as view controller yellow. So I can cast it as a yellow view controller. Make sense? All right, so basically I can, using the segue that is provided, I can get a reference to the view controller that I'm transitioning to. So now basically all what I need to do inside that view controller class is to create a variable and then pass that variable. So basically I can go back here to the view controller, right, which is the yellow view controller, create a variable. So I'll create a variable as a string, var, I'll call it name string, and it is, I define it as optional because I don't have a value for it yet. Okay, so now I created that. Now we go back to the view controller, close this, and basically now I could say that the destination view controller dot, and then I give it a name. You remember the name. Okay, and then yeah, here it is. So basically the name, and then we want to set it to what? We want to set it to self dot name text field dot text. Okay, so basically we should be able to receive the based on that, we should be able to receive the name, right? The name that's assigned to that that value, the value we are assigning a value to the name, and then basically this is the last line of defense. Basically this is, you are preparing for the segue. The segue is going to happen, right? But then before it happens, you can trigger something. Basically you can initialize some variables. One of the variables is the name parameter here. So basically when you go to the yellow view controller, we can have a label maybe, and then that label is set to the name, right? So I could go here and let's set create a label that is going to display the name that we entered. Label, go from here to here, okay, and then that's the label that will hold the name that we just passed, and horizontal and vertical, and then we'll go and set up maybe a name label. Sometimes you'll get this, it doesn't show the view controller. You just go here and set it to the automatic and it will just show the correct one. Now I'll drag the label, here we are, and that's the label. So basically this is the name label. Okay, so basically I could come here when the view did load, when actually the view actually did load, I could say if name is not equal to nil, right? Okay, else I'll do something else. If the name is not equal to nil, I will just say that self.nameLabel.text is equal to name, right? Equal to name, and then else self.nameLabel.text, this means it's equal to nil, is equal to say not set to any name. Okay, makes sense? So now we run it and we'll see what happens. So basically let's recap of exactly what is going on. We have the view controller, the initial view controller. Let's open another one here. Let's say let's open the yellow one on the right. And so this one, basically we prepare for segue in the red view controller, which is the view controller, right? And then basically all what we do is that we try to see if it is the if the identifier of the segue matches the identifier that we assign to the segue. If yes, we get the destination where we are going to, right? And we set a variable inside the view controller that we are transitioning to, right, based on whatever you have entered. And then the view controller that you are transitioning to will display a label based on the data that you have passed. Okay, so basically we go back here. Let's type Bob. Go here. I'll type Bob. And I go next to the view controller, and you can see Bob being printed here. Close. Let's go back. Bob Smith. Go next, and it's showing Bob Smith. Now, what if I don't enter anything? And I go next. Nothing gets set up. So probably what is happening here is that name is not equal to nil. So basically all what we have to do is I'll put a breakpoint here. This is something to show you how to debug. Okay, and I'll run this again. I will run it in the case when I don't enter anything. So I'm not going to enter anything. I'll go to next. Okay, and you could see that the code has stopped here. When I look at self, which describes it's the yellow view controller. The name is a string of empty string. So basically nil is not the right choice here. We'll say it's not equal to empty, right? If it's not equal to empty, then you display, otherwise you set it to something else. So basically we go back, run the code again. Okay, to deactivate the breakpoint, you just click once. Okay, to delete the breakpoint, you just drag outside. You click and then drag out. Okay, so then we are here. I click on go to next, and it says not set to any name. Close, set to some name, say Bob, submit, and you see Bob. So you have seen how you can pass data from one view controller to the next. Something to pay attention to is that the variable that we declared was an optional. Why? Because it is a variable that originally doesn't have any value. When this view controller is inflated, it doesn't have any value. That's why it is nil at the beginning. So I need to be able to so it should be able to have either nil or a value. So that's why it's optional. Okay. And we have seen how we can pass data from one view controller to the other. We also saw how you could use prepare for segue to actually prepare. Actually, you are preparing for that segue to transition by initializing data in the destination view controller that you are transitioning to. I hope this was useful. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.